Back for part 2 of Dougie Town Hall.
Do you have a read on how many doses are getting thrown out because they can't get administered? And if that is significant, is there a way for Trimet to be on call, to be available if we put our own champion approach to this thing, and that if you're going to get ready to dispose of doses, we will get our people to those places so we can align supply and demand and not just have waste?
Yeah, I can tell you that was one of the first fastest things we learned.
Oh, by the way, the news has come out that Hank Aaron died, and guess why he died? I didn't even know he was still alive. I thought he was dead a long time ago, but apparently he was still alive. Guess what killed him? Yes, ladies and gentlemen, it was the COVID vaccine. You can read about it on my Twitter feed if you feel like checking it out.
Was to not waste doses. So you're right. Once this vaccine is thawed and prepared and ready to give, if there are still doses left in the vial, we are obligated to use them on anyone that we can grab if needed. So a lot of our plans around vaccine clinics, and I'm too far from the specifics to say to describe exactly how this works. And if I find a role for Trimet, I will let you know. I don't anticipate one anytime soon, to be completely honest. But I can assure you that we are balancing people's expectations. We don't want people waiting in long lines. We want them to know that they're going to get vaccinated if they have an appointment. We also want to make sure that if there are no shows or if things, don't go according to plan, that we do have that wait list of people so that no dose gets wasted. So I guess I would offer assurance that we are getting extremely good at not wasting doses. I cannot offer you the same assurance that Trimet would be eligible to be on standby or wait lists anytime soon.
We do have access to busloads of people if you want. just kidding.
Oh, here's the article. I looked it up for you. Hank Aaron hammered to death by Moderna's COVID-19 snake oil. 2 weeks ago, an attempt to encourage African Americans to take the COVID-19 vaccine, Hank Aaron publicly took the jab of Moderna's unscientific concoction. Yesterday, an icon of the Major League Baseball and a lion of civil rights passed away in his sleep. What is astounding about the reports of hammering Hank's death is how rarely mainstream media references the fact that he took a dose of the vaccine that rushed into production. Instead, the news that's being peddled is that he died from unknown causes.
I'll keep that in mind.
Okay, thanks. Sorry. Next question, yeah.
That's great.
Here, let me just read a little bit more of this. What they are not telling you, this is important you understand this, because they are literally using us as the laboratory testing vehicle. They're using the population as the test subjects. Where was I? Okay. What they are not telling you is that these injections are messenger RNA. And she talked about a little bit here, mRNA, which have never been tried in large scale on human beings until multi-billion-dollar biotech corporations started clinical trials last year. The vaccine takes anywhere from 7 to 10. The standard vaccine takes anywhere from 7 to 10 years to gain FDA approval and has to go through 5 clinical phases, each phase more rigorous than the previous. There is a reason for this, of course. Science demands proof and efficacy beyond a shadow of a doubt. The 5 phases are pre-trial, phase 0, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and phase 4. They are meant to assess if tests or treatment are safe and work in people. Only when there is consensus that the cure is effective and the side effects are not more injurious than the disease is the vaccine given to the public. Not with these sham vaccines. In each case, Pfizer, Moderna, Biogen, AstraZeneca, and Johnson & Johnson were able to truncate the approval process. Instead of 7 to 10 years, they tested their snake oil for 3 months. Instead of undergoing 5 clinical phases, they only went 2. Their study is so phony, it's laughable. All right, that's just the other, you got to hear both sides. You're not going to hear the other side of the story from mainstream media, from paid politicians, from hack politicians, or from paid bureaucrats. They're going to give you the government line because they all make money giving you the government line. They're not honest. Why would you believe anything these people say? I don't. Now, people that know me, especially the women in my life, say I'm paranoid and I don't trust anybody. Well, they're right. I don't, and I'm not paranoid. What's the saying? You call me paranoid, I call you uninformed.
So can you test positive for COVID after you have had the vaccine? Can you still carry it? Can you still spread it to people who are not vaccinated?
There you go.
Yeah. So this is.
Did you see her grab her head? Did you see that? She said, see, look at that face. Okay, there you go. There's your answer right there. Jennifer, your body language has given you away, my dear. Luckily, nobody will listen to this. I am making these public, by the way, so maybe I'll get 20 people instead of 5. Luckily, nobody. My stuff is all throttled, I'm sure.
This is a great question. Getting either of these vaccines does not affect your test results if you are tested for COVID-19. What we don't know, let me start over. What we know is these vaccines were studied.
See, she's hemming and hawing. See how she's trying to get around? Okay, you can see what I'm talking about here, right?
Around how well they protect the person vaccinated from getting COVID-19 illness. So COVID-19 with symptoms. What we don't know is if with that protection, if that protects you completely from not even having COVID-19 virus in your nose and throat if you've been vaccinated. So
they don't know anything, okay, because they haven't tested the goddamn vaccine. They don't really know anything about this. We are the tests. 1 year or 2 years down the line, they'll tell you if it worked or not, okay? This is the truth. I'm only telling you the truth. It might work, it might not work. I mean, people are dying. I'm not in mass numbers, but they're dying.
Don't know if someone who's been vaccinated can spread or have moments where they can potentially spread the virus unknowingly to others. So that's why you'll hear us in public health still saying you need to continue using face coverings, you need to keep social distance, you need to limit your social interactions, even if you've been vaccinated, because we don't yet have an answer to that question of whether you can quietly have the virus while your body fights it off and protects you, but potentially poses a risk to others through that droplet spread that happens when we talk or sing or laugh.
And that's certainly one of the other questions that we had is once you get the vaccine, do you still need to wear a mask and stay 6 feet apart?
The answer for now is yes. I think with so much vaccine rollout and more people now certainly studying the vaccine, I think we're going to get an answer to this question. I don't know when, but I think it's a really important one because I know how badly people want to be able to skip the masks and the distancing and that vigilance that we've all had to live with for the last year.
Yeah, they're not going to skip any of that. So you're going to get the vaccine and still got to do all of that. Okay, so there you go. Because they don't know what's going to happen with them.
Okay, so we know that there's different groups who are prioritized for the vaccine. We've had some employees ask if you are in priority, whatever, 1B, which we believe that transit workers may be in, can their family members get the vaccine at the same time as the people in each priority group?
So vaccine prioritization is one of the toughest things in a situation like this. I will answer this question. Let me just start sort of big picture. The vaccine prioritization scheme comes to us from the state. So remember, I work at the county. So the state has an advisory group. The state sometimes gets input from counties, but at the end of the day, it's the state creating the different phases and the different groups, and they've convened an advisory board to help them do that. And in general, the way vaccine prioritization works is you're trying to balance people who are at risk of the virus by virtue of their job and their likelihood of being exposed, and the risk of people by virtue of their age and their underlying conditions. And so you see in the prioritization, you see kind of balancing both of those. The governor also has made getting kids back into school a priority. So she had the discretion to say, to insert K through 12 educators and school support staff. She inserted those into the vaccine prioritization scheme. So the counties get handed the scheme, we get handed our share of the vaccine, and then we do our best to get it out to people roughly in order and roughly according to state guidance. The state and the counties are very much committed to equity in this process.
Oh, no, not equity. Don't give me the word equity. I don't want to hear the word equity. There's no equity. There's no fucking equity. The streets are lined with people in tents and dying, and there's no equity. Stop saying equity.
Yes. And so we are doing our best to account for that as we get vaccine out. Because the phasing and the amount of vaccine is relatively prescribed, phasing is prescribed, the vaccine can be in flux. As you all know, we learned last Friday that we weren't getting the almost 200,000 doses we were expecting from the federal government. But to specifically,
these idiots don't even know what they're doing. They can't even get the goddamn vaccines out. What makes you think these vaccines are going to be any? These people don't have a clue. These leaders, these fucking leaders, these are the last people we should be listening to about anything.
Specifically answer this question, it is not for households. So as soon as an individual qualifies, it is for that individual who meets certain criteria. Unfortunately, it is not for their household. So that raises the possibility that household members will be eligible at different times for the vaccine. But I just wanted to give that broader picture of vaccine prioritization because it is so difficult to account for the many contributions of many people and the many risks and the disproportionate risks that some of us are bearing. I shouldn't say us, but some people are bearing versus others.
Okay. Is there a way to know which vaccine you will be getting in advance of going somewhere to get a vaccine? Are there certain hospitals or clinics which only get a certain vaccine if you wanted to make that choice?
So for first dose, again, there's not a lot of difference between the vaccines. I would have to check, but I believe for these larger clinics that are being stood up for people who are eligible, I believe they are sharing upfront which vaccine they expect to use. So for the first dose, I would say if you're eligible, get it. It doesn't really matter which one. For your second dose, though, remember the recommendation is not to mix and match. So your second dose needs to be the same one as your first dose. And whoever is getting you your first dose, in theory, should have a plan to get you your second dose. But just to be completely honest, the vaccine allocations and distribution is in flux, as we learned the hard way
know what they're doing
last week. But that is the intent.
These idiots can't even get you toilet paper when you need it. We live in Venezuela now. The rich 1% in their fucking mansions with fucking storerooms full of supplies, and then the rest of us.
Intent is to get first and second doses to people, same brand, with a plan. And you can probably find out which one you're getting for your first dose. But I would urge people not to worry too much. If you're eligible, I would say the vaccines are similar enough that it shouldn't really matter.
Yeah, okay. I can believe you.
Okay. So on the day that you're supposed to get the vaccine, is there anything that you personally can do to kind of help with the effectiveness or lessen the side effects? Can you drink a lot of water? Can you eat something healthy? Can you not drink coffee? Whatever. Is there just something that you can do to assist?
That's a great question. This is just a chance for me to promote, good, healthy living. So getting a good night's sleep, eating well.
Well, I sleep all fucking day, and I sleep all night and half the day. So, I spend more time in bed than out of bed. That's not a lie.
It's, staying hydrated, arriving, feeling well, and making sure you're doing everything to feel well in the days following your vaccine.
Actually, I hate to say this, but I feel I'm pretty fat at this point in my life, very heavy, but I can still get up off the floor without anything, without having to grab anything. And I feel good. I feel the best I've felt in years. I'm not drinking hardly at all. Very little pot.
Is a good idea. I don't know that there's any science to say, doing one thing versus another is going to help. I don't think that exists. For some other vaccines, there's a little bit of science to suggest that vigorous exercise following vaccine may help just like circulate the vaccine components and stimulate your immune system. So that's all I would share. So I'm nothing except just good, healthy living. I will use this question to say that I do get questions about whether people should pre-medicate with ibuprofen or Tylenol. There are mixed camps on that. Some people do, some people don't. And generally, it's not a blanket recommendation to pre-medicate with any kind of over-the-counter analgesic before you get vaccinated.
Okay, all right.
And is there anything special that people should expect at the clinic on the day that you're getting vaccinated? You've already talked a little bit about the 15 minutes versus the 30 minutes, of wait time after the vaccine to be monitored. Is there anything else folks should know?
They want you to stay there for 30 minutes to make sure you don't drop dead. Oh, what a fucking world. Fucking psychotic world. And now Donald Trump has disappeared. One day he's the center of attention for all day long, and he's just gone, just like that. Have you noticed? Just like that. They just turned him off. I mean, and people are talking about getting them in. Forget it, man. You've been had. You've been conned. He was a clown show. That wasn't a fucking takeover of the government. That was a staged clown show for your entertainment. Yeah, people died, but people die all the time. Nobody cared. I mean, the rulers don't care about us dying. That wasn't any kind of fucking revolution. It was a joke. Okay? If you can't see that, I feel sorry for you. And then Trump turns around and tells everybody, we don't support any kind of insurrection and them. Go home now. And I accept Biden. You've been had. Watch the latest go to YouTube, search Larkin Rose. Watch his latest. He's brilliant. He's an anarchist. He's my favorite anarchist. And he called it perfectly what just happened the last 4 years. And I knew that all along, but I mean, Trump was so off the wall. I mean, his act was so different from all of the other presidents that he completely they robbed the greatest wealth transfer in history just took place under his rule. And he had a whole fucking cult of complete morons charging into the fucking Congress because they thought he would stay. Oh man, people are so easily fooled.
Yeah, thanks. I would say you definitely want to you want to have a mask. You want to have a face covering. You will see staff, especially vaccinating staff, in full personal protective gear. So they'll be masked with eye protection, gowns, and gloves in general. It should be socially distanced, so it's going to feel big and spaced out. So
the new normal, folks, the new normal.
And really, I think we ask, especially for the larger clinics, we ask if you can, leave pets at home, leave kids at home. Just the person who's eligible for vaccine is ideal. But I completely understand that people have different circumstances and may need to make arrangements. So I think the larger vaccine clinics, I understand from my hospital partners, they're doing their best to accommodate people's needs as they're able to come in.
Dr. Vines, based on the current supply logistics in place that we know for the moment, when do you think we're in this state, in this region, going to hit herd immunity?
So herd immunity refers to when enough of us are protected against the virus that it really has nowhere to go if it gets introduced. So even if people haven't been vaccinated, are not immune, that enough of us are, the herd, so to speak, is protected and is kind of a firewall for those who are not. I will.
She doesn't know the answer to that. How is she supposed to know that? She's just guessing. I mean, even the most educated PhD scientist at Harvard has no idea who the hell what the answer to that is.
Sort of steal from some of our national experts who are predicting, fall 2021. I think that's reasonable. The caveats are, of course, vaccine production and allocations, and just how quickly we can get it into people based on how much dosing we have. On a brighter note, I will say we're getting better at these high throughput vaccine sites with our hospital and health system partners. That's not going to reach everyone. So this is going to be the work of 2021. But I still think it's exciting, and I think we have a lot to look forward to.
So just following up on this, I said, not too long ago, as we continue to live life as much as best we can under these circumstances, there are other shots. I just had my shingle shot. My wife and I did for the holidays.
I had one of those. My doctor said I better get it. So I got it. I don't know. I wonder about all of this.
Are there any combinations of other vaccines we should not be mixing together?
Yeah, so on paper, the vaccine guidance will say you really should have other vaccines two weeks apart from your COVID-19 vaccine. That's based on a lack of information about whether there is any interaction between the COVID-19 vaccine and other vaccines. And that interaction would be more around effectiveness as opposed to safety. The guidance will say, if you've had your COVID-19 vaccine, but you've stepped on a rusty nail and you need a tetanus booster, by all means, don't split hairs, get the tetanus booster. And similarly, if you're in a long-term care facility where you're at high risk of both flu and COVID-19, you don't need to worry about the 2 weeks between the shots, because just get them. I think... So operationally, what this looks like is some clinics may say, oh, you really probably should wait. We don't really know. It's up to you. Other clinics may say, definitely wait a couple weeks so that you're sure to get, the best from your vaccine. And then other places have, I'm hearing say, this is all kind of theoretical. Let's just get this vaccine into people, especially if they're there. We're not going to split hairs on this. So I think we're still settling on kind of a community standard around that, but that's what's on paper. And I've also given you kind of a sense of what is actually happening in reality as physicians and others are being asked these questions.
Back to you, Dan.
Okay. So there are other vaccines that are being created. How many are there? When might they become available? Are they significantly different than the...
Deanne does a pretty decent job of moderating these, if you notice. It's pretty good. It's like a radio host. She's doing very good, but she won't show us her face. Come on, Deanne. We want to see who you are. Come on, don't be so shy, all right? I already got pictures of you.
First vaccines from what we know, and is there any reason to wait to get them instead of the first two that are here and ready now?
Great question. There are other vaccines in the pipeline. The closest one to approval that I suspect is still months away is one that is coming in at maybe 70% effective based on early information. And this is one that's based on a technology that uses an adenovirus. So it's a virus that causes the common cold. It gets sort of stripped of its common cold properties. And then what looks like COVID-19 virus kind of gets included inside this shell that your body looks at as a cold virus. So that one is still in progress. Again, I only have just sparse early information on that one. To more directly answer the question, I would say don't wait. I think if you are eligible for the vaccine, I think these vaccines have really good safety and effectiveness profiles. Absolutely do your homework. Absolutely make your own choice based on your own research and decide for yourself. But I would say if you are eligible for either of these mRNA vaccines, I would urge you to get them.
So, Dr. Vine, just along that line, we have a lot of our employees who live in Washington State who commute in every day. Should they be signing up under Washington State protocols or through Oregon protocols?
Yeah, I don't have an answer. We are just starting to figure out this problem because you're right that vaccine allocations are based on state populations. And so as a border metro area, I actually have a question into Oregon Health Authority and others about how do we factor in the two state component, especially given that Oregon and Washington states are slightly out of sync in our priority scheme. So more to come on that.
Great, thank you.
Where do you think Trimet employees would likely get vaccinated since we don't have super cold storage sort of at our facilities?
So I can guess that as we get to essential employees like Trimet employees, I feel like we're really getting the hang of these high throughput clinics, and they're good at taking big groups of people and doing the planning for large groups of people. So I could imagine like a high throughput clinic someplace in the Portland metro area where Trimet employees would know that they have an invitation, they would have a slotted time, they would know which vaccine they're getting, and they would go through that clinic as we're doing with other phase 1A groups.
Great.
So just to add on to this, if I can, Dan, just knowing that we've got like 3,500 employees, they're not all concentrated in the same
I was right. Did you hear that? There's 3,500 Trimet employees. I was right. I said 3,000. It's 3,500 Trimet employees. Thank you, Doug. I couldn't get that answer anywhere. I Googled it. No place got the figure correct.
Area. We've got all these, unlike other transit agencies in the state, we're the only one who's really got numerous bases. So if just as a variable, if you could carry back on our behalf in the logistics planning side, that as opposed to here's one location, here's X and here's where you go, Trimet. We're just based throughout the region, of course, just to be able to be efficient. So just a point to pass along.
Thank you. Yeah, and I'll say, as much as I would love to tell you all, you're going to be up for vaccine soon, if that's not the case. The silver lining, though, is that we will have learned a lot by the time we get to you. So hopefully your process should go smoothly.
Great. So we were talking about the second dose of the vaccine. One is 21 days, the other is 28. Two questions. Is there any flexibility in that timing? And if so, how much wiggle room is there? And then are the two doses the same in terms of, I guess, components?
Yes. So yes, the two doses are the same. There is wiggle room. I think if you somehow get your either vaccine, I think it's 4 days too soon, you're still considered good. And then if you get it, later than your 21 or 28 days, that's fine too. You don't have to restart the vaccine series. You just get your second dose when you get it.
Okay. So it sounds like it may be a bit for Trimet employees to get our vaccine. So I'm assuming that if employees have the opportunity, however, to get the vaccine earlier than what Trimet is able to offer them by our priority group, that they should go ahead and get it?
Yes, and remember, it's those two sort of big picture groups. You're eligible by virtue of your job or your role, and you're eligible by virtue of your personal medical health risk. So I could imagine that you may have Trimet staff who become eligible by virtue of their age, for example, or other criteria that we come up with based on personal underlying health. So you may very well have staff who get the vaccine and should get the vaccine in their priority group when they can.
Okay. So we've gotten a lot of chat box questions in as well, so I'm going to try and sort of group them together and get through some of these. There's definitely several questions about, will folks get some type of a certification or a proof of vaccination?
How come we don't get to see the chat box questions
when they get vaccinated?
So you, as an individual, will get an old-fashioned card that says, which vaccine you got on what date, and the lot number. So you walk away with that in hand. And then everybody who's giving the vaccine has to have access to a statewide vaccine tracking database.
Oh.
And so your information will also be entered there. So that if you lose your...
See, look, okay. The more you listen to this, the more you realize there's more going on here than just COVID-19. This is the front for an international tracking network of people. There's the COVID world order here. This is much bigger than what it appears. Much bigger.
Card, or you're not sure which vaccine, which one you're supposed to get for your second dose, or when that information is available in the state.
So they have like multiple versions of this. Okay. You think there'd be like one version of COVID vaccine? No, they don't. There's like 5 versions. None of them have been tested really, because the COVID has only been around for a year, not even a year yet. So that none of these things have any track record.
Wide database, and that's what you'll see the state of Oregon using when they report out how many people are getting vaccinated.
Yeah, so they're going to track you forever once you get this. They're going to track you forever. Okay. This whole thing gets murkier and murkier in my mind.
Once you get the vaccine, are you going to need to get it every year, just like the flu vaccine?
Yeah, good question.
Yeah, great question. Short answer is we don't know. So
they don't. You don't know. God. Well, what do you know? What's the fucking point?
Coronavirus, like the flu virus, changes over time. So we've had news recently about a new version of the virus that seems to be more contagious. Expert consensus right now is that the vaccine should protect against that new strain.
They don't know.
But it may end up being like influenza, where every year we have to shift the vaccine just enough to keep up with changes in the virus itself. So we don't have an answer to this one yet. But again, we'll learn with time.
And when you're talking about the variant, are you talking about what's called the UK variant, basically?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So the current vaccine should protect against that as well.
Yeah.
Okay. Do we know how long the vaccine conveys protection, or is that too early to know?
So we know for now, my understanding is the people who were in the very, very first phases of trials of these vaccines, those people are still getting followed. So we know that they still have protection, several months after vaccination. So again, only time will really answer this question. But for now, I think people can count on several months of protection, minimum.
Okay, great. So one employee asks, his wife got her first vaccine, and even though most folks are saying that the side effects are going to be greater after the second vaccine shot, she really felt those side effects on the first one.
Oh.
Is that normal? Does it kind of just depend on the
back
individual,
again,
how their
folks.
body reacts?
Up and down.
And then that same person asked about folks who are maybe having chemotherapy. Can they get the vaccine? Yeah.
Okay, so so as far as intense reactions after the first dose, I think it's an individual level decision about the second dose. In general, those side effects are more pronounced after the second dose. So I think that's a personal decision and maybe worth talking with a healthcare provider about. As far as the second question, which remind me was about.
It is, can folks who are having chemotherapy get the vaccine?
Again, so there are different types of chemotherapy. I think this is another question for a personal healthcare provider. In general, people who have suppressed immune systems were included in the vaccine trials. So they are eligible for the vaccine, and there aren't particular safety concerns. There may be effectiveness concerns that haven't been fully examined. But there are different types of chemotherapy. There are different types of immune suppression. I certainly can't speak to all of those considerations. So that's definitely a conversation to have with your personal healthcare provider.
Okay, wonderful. One employee said that they heard that there's some research being done on giving half doses for both the first and the second dose. That this research seems to indicate that the immune response is as good with these half doses. This obviously would greatly increase the amount of people who could get the vaccine. Do you have any information, insight, comments about this research?
So I have not seen the latest on this research. It's a really enticing question to think that we could double the number of doses pretty much instantly by just giving half. I'm not up to speed on the science about how effective it is. I have heard sort of opposite concerns. Just enough to get a virus that is good at getting around, that becomes potentially stronger and more contagious. So I think I don't think there's an answer here. I don't anticipate being able to go to half doses anytime soon.
Okay. If one employee is asking if they need to travel internationally and they need a COVID-19 test, is there a certain type of test that they need to get, and how do they know what to ask for and if they're getting the right test?
Are you getting the right test?
So check with your airline and check with your destination. There are two types of tests. One is called an antigen test. One is called a PCR test. Some places consider them interchangeable, others don't. But I would check and see if they specify what type of COVID test, either antigen or PCR.
There's definitely several questions about, will folks get some type of a certification or a proof of vaccination when they get vaccinated?
So you, as an individual, will get an old-fashioned card,
you get a card
that says which vaccine you got on what date, Jesus. And the lot number.
Right.
So you walk away with that in hand.
Oh, you get a card, nice little card.
Everybody who's giving the vaccine has to have access to a statewide vaccine tracking database.
Oh, tracking for the rest of your life.
So your information will also be entered there. Yep. So that if you lose your card or you're not sure which vaccine,
there's a lot more
which one you're supposed to get for your second dose or when, that information is available in the statewide database, and that's
just
what you'll see the state of Oregon using when they report out how many people are getting vaccinated.
Once you get the vaccine, are you going to need to get it every year, just like the flu vaccine?
Didn't they just ask that?
Yeah, great question. Short answer is we don't know. So the coronavirus, like the flu virus, changes over time. So we've had news recently about a new version of the virus that seems to be more contagious. Expert consensus right now is that the vaccine should protect against that new strain, but it may end up being like influenza, where every year we have to shift the vaccine just enough to keep up with changes in the virus itself. So we don't have an answer to this one yet, but again, we'll learn with time.
We'll be doomed.
And when you're talking about the variant, are you talking about what's
trust the leaders? They know what they're doing. They really care about it.
So the current vaccine should protect against that as well.
Yeah.
Okay. Do we know how long the vaccine conveys protection, or is that too early to know?
So we know for now, my understanding is the people who were in the very, very first phases of trials of these vaccines, those people are still getting followed. So we know that they still have protection, several months after vaccination. So again, only time will really answer this question. But for now, I think people can count on several months of protection.
Several months
minimum.
Okay, great. So one employee asks, his wife got her first vaccine, and even though most folks are saying that the side effects are going to be greater after the second vaccine shot, she really felt those side effects on the first one.
Let me go backwards here. Have we heard that?
Does it kind of just depend on the individual as to how their body reacts? And then that same person asked about folks who are maybe having chemotherapy.
Well, now you're sitting in that chair.
Get the vaccine.
Exact same chair. Exact same chair.
Okay, so so as far as intense reactions after the first dose, I think it's an individual level decision about the second dose. In general, those side effects are more pronounced after the second dose. So
I
I
must
think
have gone back
that's a
on this
personal
by
decision
accident,
and maybe worth talking with a healthcare provider about. As far as the second question, which remind me was,
They're going to give you one of these vaccines down there?
It is. Can folks who are having
Did they
chemotherapy
tell you about
get
that?
the vaccine?
You're going to take
again,
it?
so there are different types of chemotherapy.
I'm not
I'll take it if you
This
take
is,
it.
I think this
No,
is
I'm not
another
taking it.
question
Not yet.
for a personal healthcare provider. In general, people who have suppressed immune systems were included in the vaccine trials. So they are eligible for the vaccine, and there aren't particular safety concerns. There may be effectiveness concerns that haven't been
A typical
fully
vaccine
examined.
takes 7 to 10 years.
But there are different
to come out.
types of chemotherapy. There are different types of
Yes.
immune suppression.
This one, they
I
just
certainly
rushed
can't
it right
speak to
out.
all
Here,
of
take it.
those
They can't even do it for
considerations.
the AIDS.
So that's
They can
definitely a
try it.
conversation to
Check it.
have with your personal healthcare
Yeah,
provider.
they can't figure out anything for AIDS, but this one they
Okay,
figured out
wonderful.
immediately.
One employee said that they heard that there's some research being done on giving half doses for both the first and the second
I
dose.
just heard this, so how did I go
This
backwards
research
on
seems
this?
to indicate that the immune response is as
Yeah.
good with these half doses. This obviously would greatly increase the amount of people who could get the
I'm going to go
vaccine.
shopping on Monday.
Do you have any information,
Again?
insight,
Now what?
comments about this research?
I'm almost out of
So I have not seen the latest on
We
this
don't have
research.
any
It's a
celery.
really enticing question to think that we could double the number of doses
Hey, I had the
pretty much
flu-
instantly
here,
by
I had the
just giving
flu
half.
and COVID at the same time.
I'm not up to speed on the science about how effective it is. I have heard.
Here, stop. My painful excursion into the world of dueling infections started on Tuesday afternoon with a scratchy throat and a mild yet annoying cough. I chalked it up to a fall in Kentucky, where sunny afternoons in the mid-70s can be followed by freezing temperatures at night. I'm no stranger to respiratory infections, having lived for years with triple threats of allergies, asthma, and low immunity. Sounds like me. On Wednesday morning, I was having a coughing fit that made me dizzy. I went to see my doctor, who assured me I almost certainly didn't have COVID-19, even though our county was a red zone. I was a bit suspicious of my doctor's reassurance because I learned that morning of a student who had tested positive for COVID-19 the week before in high school. Oh, so he was exposed to it. As a precaution, I was tested for strep, influenza, and COVID-19. I was shocked when the nurse let me know that I had tested positive for the flu, and I left with a prescription for Tamiflu. On Thursday, I was tired and achy, both mild-like flu symptoms, but was able to complete all my work. Aside from the occasional coughing fit, one of which brought me to my knees, I believe I just had the flu. The next day, I got a call that I also tested positive for COVID-19. I should have expected that because the night before I had lit a pumpkin-scented candle, but didn't realize until later I hadn't smelled its fragrance. I was extremely scared, but I was also angry. I was angry at my school for not following recommendations. I was angry at my doctor for downplaying the threat, and my family members who lashed off my concerns, even angry at me for creating a false sense of security that using an N95 mask and plexi seals in my classroom would keep me safe. I was angry and still am that the response to the worldwide pandemic has been so deeply politicized. Even though I took every precaution, it still wasn't enough. So he was wearing all that shit. I began taking nebulizer treatments and began taking zinc and vitamin D. Over the weekend, it was difficult to know which symptoms were due to COVID-19 and which ones were due to the flu. Both of them at once.
She survived to write it.
He survived, yet the coughing slowly began to improve and had a temperature above 99. By Monday, the coughing had stopped and my fever was down, but I felt even worse than before. I believe that was the point where I was over the flu, but the COVID was taking over. I slept so much that my sister dropped in on my Alexa because I didn't answer my calls for an hour. I didn't leave the bedroom except to use the bathroom and drank room temperature orange Gatorade. I watched TV, but found I couldn't focus or would fall asleep. Yeah. That's crazy, man.
Sort of the opposite concerns that too low a dose might be just enough to get a.
Okay. If someone is allergic to bee stings, will this vaccine impact them?
Bee stings will. Okay. So if you are someone allergic enough to carry like an EpiPen, so to carry the immediate antidote, if you are someone who is that allergic to bee stings, You
Jeez.
should be vaccinated in like a clinical setting where people can respond if you have a serious reaction to the vaccine, and you should plan on waiting 30 minutes. If you're someone who gets a bee sting and gets just like big and red and swollen, that would not be considered a factor.
It wasn't until Friday, a full week after I first learned that I had COVID-19 plus the flu, that I made the move from my bed to the couch. It felt like a momentous occasion. During that week, I had lost 12 pounds. After a few bites of food, I would feel nauseous and completely full. And there were days when I ate nothing, even though my family and friends delivered food to my porch. It took me 2 full days to eat one donut, taking just 1 or 2 bites at a time. During the time I felt the worst, anxiety compounded my physical symptoms. I wondered every time I fell asleep if I would wake up wheezing and unable to breathe. I am incredibly grateful that my respiratory symptoms were mild and that I was able to get through it without hospitalization. The day I was diagnosed with COVID-19, the news was full of record-breaking number of cases, more than 85,000 that day. Now the record is 140.
In either your wait time or your risk for a severe side effect from the vaccine, even though that kind of severe allergic reaction can be unpredictable and could still happen regardless of your personal allergy history.
This guy, he had all the masks, and he had a flu shot, and he still got both. He took all the precautions, and he got a flu shot, and he was wearing all the masks and things, and he still got it all. How about that?
Okay.
Is there any consideration, just following up on that, if someone's had recent surgery of any significance, is there a wait period for consideration?
Yeah, so so it depends. As always, it depends. Again, it's a question to talk about with the surgeon or your personal healthcare provider. In general, the considerations from the surgery are delaying vaccine so that the doctors treating you can distinguish between vaccine side effects versus potential complications from surgery, which is important. And so there may be a wait period depending on the surgery and how concerned your personal healthcare providers would be around either protecting you quickly against COVID-19 versus potentially having to parse through what may be just expected vaccine side effects that could mimic complications from surgery.
Would that also apply to DVT if people had DVT?
So deep vein thrombosis.
Yeah.
So to my knowledge, there's no guidance around timing of vaccine in relation to blood clots or blood clot treatment. There is a question about if you're on blood thinners, and that has more to do with just how to manage the injection site.
We have 3 minutes, Deanne. So
okay, I just have 2 questions.
2 more. Okay, 2 more to go.
That I would like to try and squeeze in. So there are a lot of people who are really scared of taking these vaccines.
Yeah.
What are the key compelling reasons to take this vaccine?
All right, let's hear that.
I think, so again, getting the vaccine is voluntary. It's a very personal decision. I understand why some people would hesitate. I would say, again, consider turning your no into a not yet.
Not yet. Yeah,
do
mine's
the
a not.
research. I will, Deanna, I'll get.
Mine's not a no. It's a not yet. I want to see what happens. Yes, absolutely.
You the publicly available list of ingredients and specific guidance around the vaccine. Talk to your healthcare provider. Find good sources of information would be what I would say. And I will just share the growing understanding of these vaccines is that they do seem to be very safe and very effective. So balance.
They don't know that yet. They don't know any of that.
COVID-19 risk is something we all have to decide for ourselves.
Okay, and last question. When do you believe life will be normal again?
She has no idea.
No
How the hell do you
face
expect her to
coverings,
know
no physical distancing. When can we travel? Gather with friends and family? What's your
Never.
guess?
My guess, right? So don't hold me to this. I am hoping that by the end of the calendar year 2021, life will feel different. It will feel very different in terms of how worried we are about COVID-19 and some of the precautions that we have to take around COVID-19. That's my big hope.
It is
All right.
11 o'clock.
Call it. Yes.
We're going to declare victory with Dr. Vines here. Dr. Vines, firstly, I want to personally thank you. Now you know what I go through every 2 weeks with all the questions I kind of get. So I want to thank you for giving me a bit of a reprieve. So you have just been outstanding here today. So
we love you. We love you. Great.
I think you've helped all of us become more informed. And again, just by your credibility, thank you again for your leadership behind the scenes, representing this community and representing Trimet as we go through uncharted waters, right? So there's no doubt it's going to continue to be messy and sloppy and unknown while we get to the new abnormal.
The new normal, yeah. See, that's
so thank you for your time today. And as this thing unfolds again, we may reach out to you even another time to have you back. So thank you again. To reminding everybody, February 4th, 10 o'clock is my next town hall. And we are going to be talking about, we're not walking away from any hard topics, even like this one. We're going to be back to talking about racism.
Oh, I can't wait for that one.
We're going to be talking about
racism. Baby.
Explore the Portland Basin from a tribal perspective this time.
All right.
David Harlson, the Cultural Resources Department Manager for the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde, is going to be here with us. So we're going to keep the pipeline going of being knowledgeable and taking hard topics on. Racism is back up next. Thanks for being safe.
Racism up next, folks. Oh, wait a minute. It's just cat stuck inside here. Before we go, I gotta. All right. Well, look, that's enough. How long has this gone on? I'm gonna read you some more, but that's enough. Over and out.